follow you. You can join us in the next time. But yeah, please follow all these things. And now, without further ado, let me give the context, right? So, Hard AI is a YC company that's just raised their Series A, not yet announced actually, so I really hope no one is recording. And what they do is they have a marketplace where I wouldn't say regular people, builders and data owners, right, can actually monetize their data by licensing it to the frontier labs like Anthropic, OpenAI, to train, because obviously we don't have enough AI in our lives and they need to get better, right? Yeah, and they also provide the tools to allow people to package and prepare their data, so strip it of all the PIIs and all of that stuff, so that when it is licensed, it's all clear and free and nobody will complain. Right, so yeah, that's what they're doing, and I'm actually consulting with them on their new product line, which is code bases, right? Before this, they were doing computer use agent and ML data sets, right? So they just launched the code bases product because everyone's obsessed with coding agents now. And in 2 weeks, they've transacted about $700,000 in GMV for code bases alone in 2 weeks. And it's not even like officially launched yet. So the demand for data is crazy in the frontier labs, right? But anyway, I'm not talking about that. The point is, they asked me, can you just go and set up vendor sourcing for the code bases product line from scratch, right? They didn't have a strategy for it, right? They had tried one or two other people before, but wasn't really very effective. So, we said, okay, let's try. And I told them, let me try by end of the week. I'll have at least one onboarded, right? And they were like, you don't have to. I was like, no, I want to try because I'm stupid, right? So that's the context, all right? That was on Monday. So today's day 5 now, and I do have some customers, I do have some vendors, always looking for more. But yeah, so how I will structure today is actually a little bit different. I don't have a deck, I do, but it's really bad. I would rather ask the audience, which parts of the GTM process you all are most interested in exploring, and we can choose like a couple and go through it, right? I'll just lay down some principles first and some quick learnings, like overall learnings, and then we can pick which aspects we want to deep dive into, and I have all of the actual databases and tools that I use ready to show you all. Again, please no one record. So some learnings first. Right? GTM or commercial stuff, especially for high trust things like this, I'm asking you all to give me your code, right? That sounds extremely scammy, right? This is not a business today. This is not a real industry, right? Yet. It will be, but it's not yet. And so if you're doing cold emails and saying, hey, get 10K for your code base, just click on this link and give all of the rights on GitHub, no one's gonna do that. So how do you actually come up with a strategy that would balance both the short-term wins, I need a customer by end of this week, but also, build out something sustainable and real and not nonsense code bases from vibe-coded slop like people like me would build, right? So these were interesting questions, but ultimately, end of the day, if you're doing this kind of high-trust GTM, the principles are still the same, AI or not, right? Always warm outreach first. Always use the networks where you already have the trust, right? And, build relationships. There's not any difference there. What really changed my approach this time with AI was, ironically, project and process management. Right? Well, not ironically, but it's kind of surprising to me, right? So it's things like never ever having to maintain my own CRM. Never ever having to create my own campaigns and learn how to use the 4 tools that I never used before in my life. Before this, HeyReach, Instantly, Exa, Clay, 64, 5, right? It's sort of being able to generate reports of what I did today, my progress, my key learnings, and the implications on the business, and who are the key channel partners that I'm working on, and explaining my strategy to the CEO every day with one skill, right? It's stuff like that that actually really saved me time and allowed me to focus on doing the stuff that AI cannot do yet. Like, okay, so who is my ICP, right? This is an industry that doesn't exist. I ask Claude to do this, it will tell me, yeah, go to engineers and go to, close down founders. I'm like, how do you even find these guys, and how do you convince them to trust you in 4 days? That's not going to happen, right? So I need to think within my warm network who, would trust me first, who has code, and all this stuff, right? So yeah, even that, I did brainstorm with AI, but it wasn't an AI product, ultimately, right? Another thing about process management that I learned, and this applies to everything, actually, not just GTM, having a context layer or a sort of project management layer separate from your Claude mem or whatever it is that you use is extremely important. Whether you want to do this in Obsidian, or for me, I use Linear to track my projects, it's fine, it doesn't really matter. The point is that you really should be using a separate layer that manages your projects. That way you separate what is just absolute noise and just chat versus having dedicated documents in your projects. Like for me, I have something called system design or strategy design, which only logs the confirmed strategic decisions that I've decided on. For example, channel partnerships, I'm going after dev houses in underdeveloped countries because the 10K incentive means a lot to them, right? So that's a locked-in decision, and that should be recorded there, the reasoning behind it and the date on which it is recorded, right? There's a whole document of just those decisions. And then there's a whole document of just the game plan, right? So all of the things that I decided I'm going to do over the next 5 days, right? Having these dedicated documents that you maintain and update after every single session with Claude or whatever it is crazy. If you manage to do this, you can actually do stuff like, hey, just create the report today of everything I did to my CEO. And it will be able to do that extremely well with 0 other questions to you, right? So yeah, with that being said, any questions on that first? Yes?
You mentioned about separating out the...
I can show actually. Here. So this is kind of what it looks like. Shit. So you can see here, yeah, let me just get that. Yeah, so you can see here all of the documents that I have, right? It's set up as system design, the agents document, of course, for agents to read and understand how everything is set up, which documents they should look at, for what, things like that. And project history for all of the things that change, and the backlog items, which is stuff that I need to pick up that I haven't done. And then there's for commercial work, especially for early commercial work, field learnings log is something that's very important, right? So when you screenshot a WhatsApp conversation you had with a friend, and he said that, hey, your thing feels like a scam because of this, right? I screenshot that, put it into Claude, and say, update CRM and relevant documents, and it knows which document to update automatically, right? And at the end, it looks like this. It's optimized for agent readability. No one can read all of this, but an agent can, right? So at the end, if I say create a 5-slide presentation on all of the things that we learn and the implications, commercial implications on our customers and what we should do, and product implications even, easy, right? So yeah, sorry, I didn't, I interrupted you, yes.
No, I think this answered what I was sort of getting to, because basically what my original question was, you're saying that after every session you are asking Claude to sort of separate and update the files and sort of create memory, but in a very labeled manner.
Very structured way, yeah.
Structured and labeled manner.
Yes.
So I think the question I was having is that how do you really go about doing that? That separation of noise versus what is good? Is it like you just put a prompt there, or have you like created some skills or guided it enough that it knows how to pick and put 10 different things in 10 different folders?
Yes, pretty much. So I created a skill called, I'm very bad at skill naming, called /readme creation project Claude 100626. Sorry, 050626. We're not at 100626 yet. And basically for every new project, and I do this whether it's a commercial project or a build, like a technical engineering build, right, for my vibe coded slop. It will create this set of documents and the agents.md, which is the first document that any agent looking at this should read, right? If you do this in your Claude over multiple projects, it kind of figures out what you want to do. So that's the easy part. But the hard part is, can you make a structure that any other agent fresh looking at this knows exactly how to navigate it, what to do, right? That's a bit harder. So that's how I've designed it for this. And so I can call like factory AI or Codex, yeah, or whatever, Devin, right? Cognition, Devin, on here, because they all came free with Lenny's product pass, right? So I can call them on this project as well if I run out of cloud credits, and they will understand what to do. Yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay. Cool. So let's go back to this. Who's interested in hearing about, okay, how about this? When I say the stage, you just clap, and then the loudest clap we will do, okay? Okay, let's try. Who wants to learn about how I use AI to learn about the company? Okay, thank you, but pretty much no one gives a shit, got it. How about project setup, which we just covered, so maybe not. How about strategy and pitch? Okay, a bit better. And how about the CRM and the outreach databases setup? Okay, about equal. Let's do the strategy and pitch first, okay? So pretty much ignore everything on this. It's, again, vibe coded stuff that I got Zoe Computer to do like in 5 minutes. So, you know what? I'm just actually not even gonna use this. Go back. Yeah, okay. So, let me show you. Oops. Sorry, I really should have been more organized here. Where is it? You know what? Let me think. How do I find it? Sorry, hold on. Oops. Did it just close my whole thing? Okay, hold on. Sorry, this is very messy. I'm like looking for the thing that I sent.
I think it's perfectly fine, but it's messy given what you achieved.
Sorry. Thank you. Yes. Okay. So here I'm downloading it. Come on, open. There we go. Okay, so this was the strategy document I came up with in about 5 hours. And that includes the whole strategy itself, right? So just want to show you kind of, obviously this is not Bain standard or whatever like I used to do, but I think it's pretty good, right? And none of it is trash. And the CEO approved it immediately, right? And this was 90% one shot with AI, right? So that's a big deal for me because my visual skills are horrible, and being able to one-shot decks from nothing is a huge time saver, right? So how did I actually come up with this strategy, right? This part is unsurprisingly not so much AI. It's literally me laying in bed and just waiting for inspiration to strike. And at some point I'll be like, oh my God, wait a minute. Who actually wants that 10K and is willing to do a little bit sus stuff? You know what I mean? While it's early, right? And sort of try, right? And how can you make this scale? So then I realized, actually, you know what? Dev houses, venture studios, and product houses have a ton of old code, right? And a lot of them, the smart ones anyway, they license their code to their clients rather than just assign the rights outright. So all these guys, they actually have a lot of valuable code, and I mean, they have hundreds of people making code every day, right? And for venture studios or gaming studios as well, right? They test a lot of games, a lot of them fail, and then they sunset them. But at some point, they were production ready and battle tested, right? So it's valuable code, right? So that part was all me. The part that wasn't me was now I had this. Now I start brainstorming with Claude. I was like, what do you think? Does this make sense? Poke holes in my argument, right? Nothing new to everyone here. And once I had a strategy, when they said like, oh, you can consider these countries, right? I said, I know Indonesia and Vietnam has a lot of dev houses and gaming studios. And I know that 10K means a lot to them, right? And I have some people in those countries, in those segments. Where else should I be looking, right? Claude really works with that, right? AI really helps you when you have a direction already, right? So then it's able to find things like that. And to validate it, I'm like, do a quick market size. How many do you think there are in Eastern Europe, right? For example. And if the number is good, okay, I move on. If the number is bad, then I think of something else, right? And then I have, a list of 10 different target segments. And after that, I say, rank and score these based on some consulting metric, right? And then they create a market sizing, blah, 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 ease of trust and, attracted, the degree to which they may be attracted to incentives, so on and so forth, and then it scores it, right? The number itself doesn't matter, it's the logic that matters, right? And so if you agree with certain logic, you say, I like that. The other logic, that's nonsense, remove that, rescore, right? You keep doing that until you're like happy with your strategy, right? Once you're happy with your strategy, then because you've maintained all of the correct documentation in your projects, I have a skill that it actually sort of, I tell it who's the audience I'm preparing it for, what the topic is, and kind of what's the main thing that I want the audience to walk away with, the main sentence, right, that it wants to walk away with. And then from there, it will read through my project documents on Linear, it will read through my Notion, whatever exists at the time. It will read through everything that exists and then proposes a narrative, runs it through my consulting headings thing because it's really bad at creating good headings and a narrative. And then I will review those headings, and then once I am happy with the headings, its instructed goal is that consulting, right? Everyone who's been a consultant here will know the content must describe and illustrate the heading, and nothing more, nothing less, right? And then once it has that, and it runs through a McKinsey partner critic, then it goes into a Gamma deck, right? And then from there I edit the final bits of Gamma, and then I send it out, right? So everything that I described up to the editing, the final bits in Gamma is one skill, one flow, right? So it is really one shot, right? So yeah, any questions on strategy and deck making? Yes?
So the prerequisite is you need to have a basic idea in the market and your customer base that you can start with, right? So that he eventually uses the tool in order to enrich the whole process.
So I wouldn't say it's a requirement, but it helps a lot, right? Because especially when you're dealing in markets where it doesn't exist, they will make stuff up, right, that may not be suited for you. And if you are the kind of person that's very mentally disciplined and you can listen to another person's opinion at the start and not get swayed by it and not get locked into those paths, then you should be able to start from nothing, right? And just use AI to trigger that inspirational process. But maybe it's a personal choice as well. I am not one of those people, I think. Once AI tells me I should do something, I might be convinced. You know what I mean? So I may never have thought of these sort of target segments, especially like gaming studios in like Indonesia. Who would have thought of that? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think AI would have thought of that, right? And in fact, it didn't when I did ask it after I already had my ideas, right? So it's not a prerequisite, but I think it helps a lot and prevents you from getting stuck into the thing that AI is trying to tell you to do before it's too late, right? Yeah. Yes?
So sorry, I have a question. Who actually was, who got this document? You actually might have mentioned it, but I'm sorry I didn't catch
CEO.
it.
CEO of HUD
Okay,
AI.
so the CEO of
HUD AI.
HUD AI. What was the response to the document? I'm really keen to know, because you generated this is awesome. What you explained is great, but what really was the outcome?
Literally, to be fair, this guy is like, you know, extremely intelligent, genius level, ADHD dude. So he looked through it for like 10 minutes. He was like, I really like the thinking, go. That's it.
Okay, but then did he circulate, so obviously he spent about 10 minutes reading this document, so did he have enough time to go into the details and challenge you, or, you know, parts of this?
Who knows, who cares? The point is that, you know, this was a strategy that would define the rest of the engagement, and he knows it. And so he knows it's important. He chose to dedicate that amount of time, whatever it is, or attention to it. And he saw it, and he liked it. He was like, yes, another candidate also tried venture studios, but failed. If you can do that, that's amazing. That's it, right? Yeah.
So in building these GTM strategies, I mean, this is a question on the quality of what the AI basically outputs, because it outputs a lot of things very confidently, which are very wrong.
Yeah.
And this coming from someone who did this for a bunch of clients in my like previous venture. So how do you separate out, because whatever you say to AI, models sort of tend to be very bullish on whatever you throw its way.
Yeah.
So how do you make it push back in a certain sense? Because we have often experienced AI giving us even very microscopic breakdown of exact numbers, number of users, revenue, everything. We go to the market, talk to people, and it kind of blows up in like a couple of interviews. Like,
of course.
This entire thing is bullshit.
Yeah.
So one thing, where does the human sort of expertise and experience end, and where does the sort of AI takes over, and how valid it is based on your experience?
Yeah.
And second, is there any advantage in using like different AIs to sort of cross-check? Because what OpenAI outputs, I put it into Gemini. Gemini will take a completely contradictory approach. Grok will take another something very tangential. And Claude will be again very bullish and very you know, go sort of a thing. So I also observe these very different personalities on the same idea, especially in GTM, where it's not clear-cut right or wrong.
Yeah, correct.
So how do you sort of reconcile that?
I think you kind of answered it in the question itself, right? It's like, where does commercial expertise start and where does it end? Well, it depends on how much commercial expertise you have. right? Like, I'm a commercial guy. I'm not a tech guy. This building stuff, everything was like 5 months old skill, right? At most, right? I spent most of my life as like a consultant at Simon Kucher and Bain and a whole bunch of other places. And for me, the commercial judgment part comes naturally. So for me, I use Claude one time, I look through this thing, I can kind of tell which is nonsense and which is not, right? A market size that is, you know, a magnitude of 2 zeros off stands out to me very, very clearly, right? Okay, that's actually not that impressive if, you know, it's 2 magnitudes off. But you get what I'm saying. It's someone who doesn't have that expertise. Yeah, sure, you should build in those guardrails, but at the end of the day, you should also acknowledge that there is no right answer, unlike coding, right, where something is semantically or syntactically correct or not, right? So you just have to sort of do your best judgment and then ideally hire someone like me or someone else to go and actually take a quick glance, right? And to try to get AI to decide your entire commercial strategy that will determine your next 3 years of operations is really dumb. Like, it's just really stupid, right? So you shouldn't do that, right? Now, what you described with using different AIs to check your stuff and all of these guardrails, yes, you should do that the less you are good in that field, right? And I do that for my engineering stuff. I have no idea what I'm doing, right? So I waste so much tokens running through this extremely intense pipeline for every single code change that I do. You know, I'll spawn like I have a skill called /independent subcommittee review agent Claude 10.06 that spawns 4 different independent sessions, each with a different persona to check the code and then verify it and then implement it, and after implement, I spawn another one to go and check, you know, and do a final review. And it goes in. That's super wasteful. But I do it because I know my engineering sucks. I don't know, I can't catch something if it goes wrong, right? But so ultimately it depends. How confident are you in your intuition, right? In your judgment? Does that answer your question? Yeah, okay, cool. And the last thing on hallucination, right? I mean, you guys can read this yourself, right? Someone just now asked like, how good is the quality? You can read this and tell me, you know, how stupid or not this thing is, right? I don't think it's that bad. And I got it to not hallucinate on this stuff by having that organized project structure. Because it takes that as canonical and it doesn't use anything outside of that. It almost becomes like a mini RAG system, right? Rather than you know, fetching from the web or token optimizer kind of thing. Token predictor kind of thing. Yeah, okay, cool. Any other questions? Yes, Fahad.
I want to learn how you get to this. So I suppose you have a series of steps to get an AI agent to first research the company, break it down into the different documents before this comes out, right? I suppose, what's the context you give it for? What AI model do you use to make this? ChatGPT or Codex or?
Claude for the prompt and then Gamma for the...
Claude Code or Claude?
Claude Code. I use Claude Code for everything. Okay. I don't want to maintain multiple systems.
So when you have this prompt, what are the documents that you feed into the prompt to generate this?
You already saw them on the project documents. That's it. Okay. That's it. Like it should never be looking outside of project documents or canonical Notion databases that already has been established as like canonical.
And to establish those canonical documents, you have another step before it to get AI to go and pull extract and filter?
It's as needed. It's as needed.
How are those documents generated?
Yeah, so that's a CRM databases step and all that. But you saw already the project documents, how it's generated. I said I made a skill. It knows, like in the skill I was very careful to define what each document is about, and each one has an agent readme on top, and what are the structure of every entry. There's a uniform entry for every single type of document. So it's very machine readable, right? And it's you never put things in the wrong document is very hard to misinterpret, right? So that's my system. However you want to separate out your sort of project management system, that's up to you, right? But this works for me. Yeah.
So I suppose the real reusable skill is your methodologies into how to approach it.
Yes,
right?
and this works so well for me. It's, in fact, for a time, and I'm still working on it. It's just I've been side questing for a while. That's why I wanted to build like a AI-native project management, because I think projects today are still managed very badly, and the overhead is so high. No one uses Trello or Notion for any real a personal project. For me, I think it's a breakthrough, understanding that the project management structure actually helps AI a lot. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, Hansel, I really like the approach that you took here. It's like, it sounds like you had an intuition and you formed a hypothesis right up front.
Yeah, consulting, right?
Yeah, I think actually works really well, because the way I wrote it, I'm curious to see what your thoughts on it is. Basically, for all code bases, there are some code bases that had impact that maybe the person may not likely want to sell.
Yeah.
But there's tons of code bases where they had learning, but no impact. And that seems that that's like your intuition. You're saying, hey, the particular code bases that I want to go after is the ones that had some sort of learning, but not necessarily impact, and you want to help them capitalize on that learning. Is that the kind of the hypothesis that you were thinking? And impact meaning like some sort of commercial success, right? Because
there's so many companies out there and so many code bases that were at one time very successful.
Yeah.
Right? But let's say it's a custom code that you build for a client, and you're like a consulting firm or dev house or whatever. And this worked super well for 5 years, right? And they were so happy with it, and they made tons of money with it. And then they went in a different direction, and they deprecated the code and migrated it off and hired another vendor, and they released the rights to that code, or the contract said that, it's 5 years. Why not? It's now sitting around collecting dust, right? And a dev house is by definition in the business of getting paid for their code, right? Yeah. So why not monetize their code further, right? So not necessarily just learnings. Right?
So at some point it had commercial success.
Yeah.
Right.
Even now, right? Like internal tools that you've built.
Yeah.
Stuff like My Skill, for example, right? Okay, not so much code, it's more prompt, but
Sure.
You have workflows that worked internally for a very long time. It still counts as battle-tested production code.
Totally.
Even there was zero commercial success, right? Because this had multiple contributors, worked for multiple people, there was like a support system where tickets were filed and things were resolved. What difference is there from like a commercially successful tool, right? All of these can be monetized. And even if it's in use today, as long as they're not worried about labs having access to how a small dev shop runs their thing, who cares, right?
Yeah, that's a good business model. It's awesome. Thank you.
Yes?
Sorry, part of the question that you kind of asked is, what's the intellectual property implications?
Yeah, it's a license. It's not a sale.
Right, so when you mention it's a license, so then would that be a perpetual license or term license, or
probably term license.
Then what will be the revocations principle? Because it's like I give X to you, you take X to train something, and now I revoke X from you. How do you revoke your training?
Yeah, that's a legal question that probably should be outside of this talk. Please talk to me about this after.
Yeah,
if you have code bases you want to do and then you want to have this conversation, let's have the conversation. But I think for now we should stick to sort of GTM.
Okay. Because that one will have implications on the previous process that you put up in terms of your contract and your I saw you have an RFP process or agreement kind of process. How would that impact that one as well?
That's already like toward the tail end of the GTM process, right? You already have someone who wants to sign something with you. That's just a negotiation between two parties. That's not AI, right? That's not AI at all. Yeah, that's just boring old enterprise or vendor onboarding. Cool. Anything else? If not, shit, we've covered one thing. 1 hour. Let's cover one more thing shortly, and then we can save the rest for next time.
How about events?
I won't be covering this in the event. We have much more cooler demos. But the next couple events, which is why you need to follow the new GTM community. But yes, so, okay, cool. I know there will be two that everyone will be super interested in learning about. So can we have clap again for how we set up CRM and outreach databases? Okay. Can I get claps for how we set up cold outreach campaigns at scale using AI? Okay, let's do that. All right, so first question everyone always has, how do you choose the stack, right? Well, if the company already has a stack, you use that stack, unfortunately. But I did have to choose some tools that were outside of this stack. For example, they didn't have a LinkedIn outreach thing because they never used LinkedIn. Because again, these are all a bunch of engineers running a company that live on X, right? They don't understand the concept of LinkedIn. So they never thought about it. I needed a LinkedIn thing, and I asked my Claude, like, hey, what's the state-of-the-art sort of LinkedIn outreach thing today? It recommended Dripify. And this is my qualifier now. To every tool that I use. Which one is MCP native or has APIs, right? And then it's like, oh, yeah, Dripify doesn't have a dedicated API. There's like community APIs that are built, which by definition won't work as well, right? The only one that has that native API is HeyReach. Right? So I was like, okay, cool. That answers my question. Right? So immediately, as long as it has decent reviews, it has like a free trial for 7 days or whatever, and it has an API, I use that too. Right? So there's also another thing that you have to learn about AI native tools. Although they absolutely can give you an API or an MCP and have Claude do all of the work for you, they are incentivized not to let you do that. Right? Because if you're using Claude to run their systems, you're not spending API credits on them. You're not spending AI credits on them for which they make a cut. Right? So things like Clay, I think, are really horrible, and I hope they don't be the winners. But they do this exact thing, right? They absolutely can. Like, let Claude drive the whole thing. But they don't want you to. They want you to spend the credits to generate the leads on their platform, to manage everything on their platform, to give the outreach on their platform. But actually, I just need it as a CRM management, right? To create structured tables to feed into something else, right? So for that, I found it hard. So then what's the answer for that? Computer use, right? Computer use is generally the worst part of AI, but it's getting better really fast, right? So I will show you now on like, so this, just for clarification, I didn't set up a single campaign manually, which was awesome because having to learn 6 tools in a week where you also have to do like a bunch of other things, it's just overwhelming, right? So you can see here, this database was fully generated, populated, checked, and set up in Clay as a campaign using computer use, right? Of course, it had to stop and tell me to go and upload this CSV they prepared at one point because apparently that's one of the limitations of computer use today. But other than that, it was fully automated, right? And these HeyReach campaigns as well were all fully automated. Even the Canvas builder, right? Which surprised me a lot. Like it did this on its own, using computer use, because there's no API to control this part, right? Which parts were human? The writing, because AI writing is still really freaking bad, and in an industry where the value proposition is not so clear, there is no data online to sort of sell this sort of product, right? So then that's where your commercial sort of marketing skills come in, and you write copy and all of that. Okay, so anyway, I got a bit sidetracked there. But essentially, my recommended stack today, as is Instantly for emails, HeyReach for LinkedIn, Clay for database creation and lead generation on a simple first pass basis. It's quite cheap. And 64 for deep enrichment, right? 64 often finds things that Clay cannot find, but it is not a good CRM and it's not a good database manager. So my system is, I set up a skill, a pretty complicated skill, actually. Wait, sorry, I keep getting distracted. Let me finish the tool stack first. EXA, for sure, for meaning search. So when you have something that is very clearly searchable by keyword, like dev houses in Vietnam, for example, right? Easy. Clay 64 can do it for you. But when you're trying to say, I want to find dev houses that likely are close to financial ruin and maybe a little bit desperate, right? Then that's EXA, right? Because EXA searches by meaning and not by keyword, right? So when Clay fails, or when Clay is not suitable, semantic search is not suitable, I populate the initial lead list with EXA, supplement with Clay, enrich with 64, and then move those into HeyReach and Instantly for those two outreach channels, right? I didn't use any, I'm like a B2B guy mainly, so I don't know Instagram and Facebook ads and all that, but I'll learn at some point. So sorry, I can't inform on that part. But yeah, so that's the stack. Before I go into sort of how I created a skill to run through that entire stack in one shot, does anyone have any questions on the stack? No? Pretty clear? But yeah, I think yes.
So it's about outreach. So at the moment I'm doing a little bit of LinkedIn outreach. So I use Claude as an extension, except it burns a lot of tokens. I heard also Manus is very good for outreach as well. Have you ever used Manus before?
Sure, of course, yeah.
How does that? I've never used Instantly. So what's the difference between the two?
It's for emails. It doesn't.
It's for emails.
Instantly is not for LinkedIn.
Okay.
It's for emails.
Okay.
Yeah, it has you can integrate it into HeyReach, or rather HeyReach can integrate it into Instantly. So you manage it all from Instantly, but it's not primarily for LinkedIn. And I do recommend HeyReach. It's quite good. Now, why would you use HeyReach over Manus or whatever, right? Well, simply put, when you think about it, a lot of what outreach is extremely mechanical. And when something is extremely mechanical, the general question you should ask yourself is, why am I using AI for this? Right? Because it burns tokens, it can hallucinate, even if you have a very simple rule, bracket first name, hi, bracket first name. If you use an AI, there's a pretty good chance that it will mess up even that, because it's trying to use probabilistic reasoning for something that really should be just a script, right? And especially since with Manus, LinkedIn it has an API, but it doesn't really, Manus doesn't do it through API, it uses computer use, right? And so when it uses computer use, it's even worse. Because now it has to you know how computer use works, right? You take a screenshot of something, then you reason over the image, you decide what to click next and what to type next. There's so many points of failure in that. But something like HeyReach, it creates the message to feed into into the campaign, and that's just script, it's just text, right? The only real LLM part that's needed in an outreach for LinkedIn is maybe your lead generation, right? Otherwise, why are you using AI? Yeah, does that answer your question? Yeah, and then like, of course, you can see here, right? Like HeyReach, it allows you to orchestrate these sort of campaigns. Oh shit, it's not there. Wait, why is it not showing? Have I been just clicking around and you're not seeing anything in the last 10 minutes? Oh no. Why is it not showing? What?
Oh, because...
Ah, now it's showing. Okay, it was for some reason lagging. Yeah, so it has this like campaign. Oh my god, what is happening? Okay, it's lagging very much, sorry. It has this campaign sequencer, right? Which, again, Manus doesn't have. It's not meant for this. Claude doesn't have this. You must write a script, essentially yourself, which it then runs every time, over and over and over again, if you want to achieve this sort of deterministic outcomes, right? Not to mention that Claude or Manus or whatever is not always on and polling every 10 minutes, for example, like an OpenClaw is or Hermes is, right? Whereas Instantly or HeyReach, all these things, they have their own inbuilt timers that, based on their understanding of when it's safe to send the next LinkedIn request or whatever, the cooldown and the retry logic and all of that, that's all built in based on best practices, right? And they will just send your campaign over the window that you decide is safe to send your campaign is. And none of that you can do in like Manus or Claude, or they will be creating that logic on the fly, which is decidedly worse. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. Any other questions? All right, I'll just do one last part, not a whole new topic, but just, yes?
Testing.
You can just shout.
Testing. What do you think of people who say that in the early stages you should be like doing the email yourself, like crafting the email, and only once you understand how it
But I do. I craft every email myself.
And then at what stage do you automate it?
Yeah, so usually, okay, it's always a mix, right? Like, again, it depends on how good you are. I've done this for years. I think I've done cold outreach for maybe 20 companies at this point, right? I have a muscle developed to kind of understand, what are the things I need? One LinkedIn connect request, a follow-up message, and the same thing for emails and like a deck, right? And whatever it is, that's certain different formats. So if you know you're good at it, do it from the start, right? But if you know you're not so good at it, then brainstorm with AI. Like just now, right? Brainstorm with AI, see what angles could there be. But ultimately, every connect request or every thing should have hi X, I know what your pain point is. This is my intended solution for you. Hook. It's just that, right? So if you can develop a really nice skill to do that, I'm sure you can, right? And actually, you gave me an idea. I should probably do that. Then sure, you can automate it from the start, right? But for me, I will craft my own messages and send them out myself for like the first few until I'm not ashamed that this goes out to people who might judge me for it, right? Then I'm like, okay, at this point, I'll ask Claude, are there any improvements on this, right? Can I test a different angle? And when it tests a different angle, it will create a first draft, but I will edit it myself. Yeah, because no matter what, people can still smell AI writing from miles away. Maybe not boomers, but like everyone that's not a boomer, So yeah, and then the last thing that I wanted to show is this, on the same topic. So, yeah, okay. Okay, this doesn't really, it doesn't really show the full extent of it, but essentially I made a skill called /cold outreach target stack, where you just define, say for example, I want you to find 60 dev houses in Vietnam between 1 to 50 people. I want the MDs and the CEOs. And ask me any questions before you start. That's it. That's the brief. What it will do is it will run it through that entire stack that we talked about. So first it will sort of ask me any questions if I'm unclear with my ask, like if I forgot to say MD or CEO, for example, then MD or CTO, right? Then it will ask me those things. But once it's clear on what I want, it actually starts from Clay, enriches the leads. If it's not getting, and then it checks the leads. If it's not happy with that, go to Exa, do the meaning search, and then populate Clay, and Clay will find maybe 60% of the LinkedIn and the email. If it can't find either, it will then go to 64 to try to find those gaps. And after that, it will then do a verification pass back in Claude to see if all of these are real, right, and are the correct audience, and they've met the criteria. And then after that, it would send these campaigns to Instantly and HeyReach, and then it would generate outreach drafts for that audience. If I don't have an outreach draft for that audience already saved in my Notion canonical outreach templates database. If there already is one, it will look in that and use that. Right? So you can see it's actually really like structured and organized the way that this is done. And because it's structured and organized, I never have to touch those databases, which is amazing. Right? So then after it does it, it never sends out or launches the campaign for me. I will look through that. I will look through the campaign, through the sequence thing and see the message, is it correct, edit, and then once I'm happy, I click the send button. Right? Yeah. What it's really good at, and I'll end off with this, some things that have surprised me in this thing that I used AI for. It's like, when HeyReach doesn't send out a lead for like an hour, and I have no idea why. I asked Claude, like, hey, HeyReach is not working, fix it, man. You know, and then it will try to figure out, and it will query, and it will try these different things, and it will say, oh yeah, ultimately, I think it got hung on a particular process. I restarted the campaign, and I've now checked that it's launching again. I'm like, okay, cool. You know, otherwise, that in the past could have been like a support message, you know? I'm like, why is this not working? It's not sending, blah, blah, blah. Another thing that surprised me is actually like stuff that I forgot, right? Like, I was like, oh shit, I met this Turkish dev house owner in Singapore at a Claude Code meetup like 4 months ago. I added him on LinkedIn. I don't remember his name. I don't remember his studio name. But like, he's obviously a target, right? So I literally tell Claude, hey, I don't remember this dude's name. He's Turkish. I think he has a Turkish sounding name. Look through my LinkedIn, find this dude. And it will go through a bunch of different processes, burn through a bunch of tokens. Like, I think it's either this guy or this guy. I'm like, yeah, you're right, thank you. You know, like, yeah. So those are some of the ways that really help, that I didn't expect it to help. And as a GTM people, like, that's like half your job, right? Like who do I know that like can get me to this person, you know? So yeah, and that, I think we should end there. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Hansel. Open Coworking, feel free to hang around. Today we are quite packed. We will try and get some tables for you guys if you are staying around. But also a shout out for you wanna do a shout out? It's today, right?
The what?
Book club.
Yeah, if you want. Yeah, so, we have tons of people already.
For those who are interested.
Yeah, something we started is every Friday we have a book club, and this is our first week. And the book that we're covering is Gödel, Escher, and Bach. If you're interested, it's a book in philosophy, math, and logic. And it's a foundational book in AI, so if you're interested, it's a very, very beautiful book. And we are in the first week of it, so we're actually going to do a summary. So if you're interested, we can give you a summary, and you can join us for week 2 as well. Thank you.
All right, thanks guys. Enjoy the day. Hang around, network, ask Hansel questions, or if you need him for GTM, reach out.
Yeah, and seriously, if anyone has old code bases and they want money, I know it's us, that's why I'm here, proving that it's a good thing. I am aware, I told them that I need to fix their onboarding process. Yes, correct. It's rare. It's rare. They don't make a lot of